Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. It's Friday, October 15th. We're halfway through the month. Unbelievable. All right, our agenda today, we will start out with success stories. I do know of two different landings. I'm not sure if they're on the line with us or not, but we will check them out. Then we will go to 30-second introductions. We'll have everybody enter their information into the chat box, which I'll copy and make sure I get out to everybody this afternoon. After that, we'll go to our committee reports, workshop, job fairs, pit crew, interview success workshop, the career tip of the week, and then we will have the main event hearing from our speaker. All right, let's see here. For those on Zoom, if you will please just sort of double check to make sure your full first and last name is there. If you click on the participant box, and if you hover over the microphone and camera under the More option, you'll be able to rename yourself. So if your name is not totally there, this is the way I collect everybody's names to make sure I put them on the roster. If you don't put your information in the chat, please make sure your name's on the roster or on the participant box. That way I can do it. If you have your full first and last name, that would be appreciated. For those people, if you have questions today, please use the chat box to enter any questions you've got. We'll be sure to get them answered for you. For those people on Facebook, please just enter your comments into the chat box, into the comment field, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. For those on Zoom, we always ask that you go to the speaker view, which is in the lower left-hand corner, and where that red arrow is, you can slide that back and forth and make the speaker bigger or smaller, and the slide whatever ratio if you're on a PC or Mac. I'm not sure how that would work on a tablet. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your camera or microphone on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. In 2008, I started Career DFW to help people in the DFW area put all the resources for the unemployed in one spot. In 2012, I launched CareerUSA.org to help people outside the DFW area. And also that year wrote a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search. And that mostly came from the little tips and stuff that we got from all of our speakers on Friday mornings. Since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Well, we like to start the meeting off with good news. So do we have anybody online who has landed a job? Please unmute your mic and please let us know. Going once, going twice. All right, well, I know of two stories. So Sheila Mabius has landed. She interviewed last Thursday. She received an offer on Monday morning, and she started this past Tuesday as a senior program manager at Forward Air. Please share these three thoughts. This is what she asked me to do. Number one, it will happen for you. Don't give up. Number two, you never know what will catch the eye of the hiring manager. The company where I landed is interested in an area of my expertise that I did not even think about as being valuable. Keep an open mind about what a company needs and what's your value. And the third thing was network. So congratulations to Sheila. And our second landing that I know about is Jeff Leonard. Jeff Leonard is a senior IT project manager at Avanti Technologies. He told me he was able to utilize his network by two former colleagues from two different companies that were current employees, which provided the internal referrals. And we talk about this all the time, that an internal referral gets you a 50% chance of getting a phone call with somebody. He said being involved with the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group definitely provided helpful information along with the tips and tricks to assist in my job search process. And he especially found the interview series that happens every Wednesday that's done by Mark McDonald and Walt Glass to be extremely beneficial. So, a lot of people spend time on the resume, and then You spend some time on LinkedIn, but how much time do you practice interviewing? And Mark will talk more about that in just a few minutes. So congratulations to those two people. That makes number 70 and 71 for the year. So we've now had 71 landings out of the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group that I'm aware of this year. All right, so what we want to do now is we want everybody, if you will, open up your chat box. For those people who are on Facebook, you're welcome to please enter your information into the comment field. But in the chat box, please put your name, phone number, email address, position you're looking for, a couple target companies, and then hit the return key so I get all this information together. And then I will put all that information out this afternoon. For those people who do this on Facebook, I will go delete your personal information as soon as this meeting's over with. So we'll be able to protect your information. It won't be hanging out on Facebook. So you guys, 60 seconds and go. Thank you very much. Hope everybody had an opportunity to do that. You can also take care of that a little bit later. All right, well, it's time for job fairs, career fairs, training workshops that are going on in the DFW area. Good morning, Eldon.
Good morning, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. The information that I'm going to share with you this morning comes from the website careerdfw.org, the calendar tab. There are many things on the calendar tab. I focus on career and job fairs and special workshops or events. I go over these fairly quickly. If you hear something that catches your ear, I urge you to go to the calendar, click on that particular item, and there's usually more information about it and or a link to register, or a Zoom link in this case. All right, this week's career and job fairs. Plano Family First Job Fair will be held Saturday, October 17th from 8:30 to noon, and there is a link on the calendar to find out more about that. This week's special workshops or events. Today, the online Third Friday Internet of Things Special Interest Group Breakfast is Friday, October 16th. It started at 7:40 and runs till 9, so it's probably just about over other than the schmoozing. If you're interested in the Internet of Things, I highly recommend that you get involved with this group because they have a lot of good speakers and you'll get to network with a lot of people who are in that area. Online at this time only, the Who You Know Career Transition Summit. That's Monday, October 19th from 1 to 3 p.m. This is hosted by Foster Williams, and there is a Zoom link to find out more about that. And if you don't know Foster, I would urge you to get to know Foster Williams. Online LinkedIn Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Join Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, or Ruth Lipsky each week online for a session. There's a Zoom link to find out more about that. And Jeff, I don't know who's speaking this week, but they rotate the speaker duties and usually have an interesting topic that people should find very interesting.
It's Locke Alderson this week.
I'm sorry?
It's Locke Alderson this week.
Oh, it's Locke this week? Okay, great. Yeah, you get to hear different viewpoints about LinkedIn and how to use it, and it's very informative. Online Frisco Career Transition Workshop will be Tuesday, September 29th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. This session is Adapting Your Salary Negotiating Strategies to COVID-19, and that'll be hosted by Rex Sowett. Online Interviewing Wednesdays with Mark McDonald and Walt Glass will be held on Wednesday, October 21st from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. This week is session 12 of their 13-part series. Limited interview prep time, difficult interviews, interviewers and questions, and cultivating confidence are the topics. Online Resume Thursdays with Carol Brickell, Certified Professional Career Coach, will be held Thursday, October 22nd from 1 to 2 p.m. And there's a Zoom link on that for you to participate. And finally, Cars and Stars, Success Stories for Interviewing. This is hosted by St. Andrews Career Care. This week's speaker is Rick Wagner, leader of the RENG Job Group. This will be Thursday, October 22nd from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And there's a Zoom link on the calendar for that one. And that's it for this week.
Great, Eldon. Thank you very, very much. All right, let's see here. For those people, if you're trying to find other networking groups that are in the DFW area, I've added a link in addition to the other calendars that are on there. One of the calendars just has all the webinar teleseminars are out there. And I put a link on the very front page of Career DFW. You can click right there where the blue arrow is on the right-hand side, and it will come up with a calendar. It looks like this in purple. And on there are all the events that are happening, all the events that groups are having in the DFW area that are webinars or things that you can attend sitting at in the comfort of your own cozy chair. If you know somebody who just lost their job, almost 900,000 people filed for new unemployment last week. First-time unemployment filers. We've got a page on the Career USA website and the Career DFW website. I just lost my job. What do I do now? If you know of anybody who's just lost and they're not really sure where to get started at, please tell them to click here for help. And what will come up is a page with some really great tips and some resources and things that people can go and apply for. Just some really good basic stuff on here on how to get started in their job search. So, you get them with a running start. Good morning, Mark.
Uh-oh. Caught me not paying attention. Actually, I was looking up the information I had on Sheila Mabius, who we just announced that she landed, Jeff announced, and so she was a little coy about what it was about her background. So let me tell you, and this isn't any kind of confidential information, but she's a senior project manager, and she had many years of experience in the oil and gas industry. And the last couple of years or so, she had done some work with them to divest some of their businesses. So as they were struggling financially, they were selling off parts of their company. And so that's what she did, even though it wasn't her main job. Well, so that's what this new company hired her for. They're in a similar situation. They're not in oil and gas, but they need to divest some businesses. And so she was contacted on Thursday of last week, and it's a contract job. But on Monday, they called and offered her the position. So there you go. It can happen just that fast if you've got a good match. So be encouraged. And the second part of that story is how busy the pit crew is. We're very busy. I think there's even more interview activity going on than there was a slight lull, very brief lull around Labor Day, and it's been pretty strong since then. And now it's gone into a new gear. So I'm booked up all next week until Friday. So if you'd like, now that doesn't mean we can't do 2 per day, but the pit crew is getting close to being full. So if you got something going on, get your information in early. And so I think most of you know how to do that, but just let me say for those who are brand new that if you want to do a practice interview, and the pit crew is all about building your confidence that you can tell your story well in an interview situation. And we do that by giving you an opportunity to practice with a very customized and personalized interview experience based on a job description and your resume. So you need to send those in to me at the dallaspitcrew@gmail.com email address. And then I go to work setting up a session with the panelists or our pit crew volunteers who have all been hiring managers. And so we try to get 2 or 3 interviewers to take you through a video conference panel interview. It takes about 45 minutes, and then you'll get feedback afterwards on the things you did well, and we focus on those as well as the things that you could improve upon. And so it's very focused on a particular opportunity, and you can practice as many times as you like. As a matter of fact, you can even practice against a job description that is not something you're pursuing. Just go out there and find the perfect job description for you. It may be out of town. It may be something you'd never really pursue, but it's a good description of what you expect to interview for. Hey, it might be a job that's been posted on one of your target companies. How about that? It could be one that was posted months ago, right? That you said, yeah, this looks really good. Just find something that we can personalize your interview against and send it in, and we'll give you that first practice session. So, if the pit crew fills up in the future, you've had a chance to practice and you're that much more confident and that much more polished and effective in your interviewing skills. So that's the Dallas Pit Crew. Reach out to me via email. Let me tell you a little bit more. I also, besides leading the pit crew, I also coach a little bit on one topic, and that is, why did you leave your last position? And that's one of the key questions you need to be answer with confidence and brevity in the interview. So if that's going to be complicated for you, if it causes you some angst or some anxiousness, then we'll have a discussion on how to tell that story. Not only the initial question, but also any follow-up questions that may be generated by your situation. So just reach out to me same way at the Pit Crew email address. And there's my LinkedIn profile up there. I also encourage you to link in with me and let me know that you heard me on this channel, on this Zoom call. I have a pretty big network because I worked in the Dallas-Fort Worth area almost my entire career, except for 4 years. And so, I'm pleased and willing to make all my first degree connections, your second degree connections, which will help you with your networking. And then finally, let me say that, people are landing and I need more volunteers. So if you've been a hiring manager, it wasn't quite final, was it? I got two things. So if you've been a hiring manager, you are eminently qualified to help others in their job search while you're in your job search, and you'll get a lot out of it. Not only the satisfaction of helping others, but you will become a better interviewer yourself just by, sitting on the panelist side of the desk. And so I encourage you to reach out to me. You don't have to make a big time commitment. You offer your services to help candidates when you can. And I'll tell you more if you reach out to me. And then now finally, okay, so when we were meeting face to face, and I hope we get back to that soon, we had a little education session at the end of the interviews that we did on Wednesday afternoons. And now with Jeff's help and Walt's involved as well, we've made that a lot more formal and a lot more in-depth. So we have 13 chapters to the story we tell about how to interview well. And those are recorded. Jeff will talk about how you can find them. They're recorded every week. Coming up next week is, we have a session on basically building your confidence and how to handle difficult situations. So how to handle difficult questions, how to handle difficult interviewers. And maybe you guys have had this happen to you, just a cranky interviewer. And some interviewers do this on purpose. They just take a very negative approach to challenge you to see how resilient and determined you are. So very cranky interviewers. And then, one topic I think is interesting because it happens a lot is how to prepare, how to be well prepared, even if you don't have a lot of time. So as much as you can do, in advance is good, but sometimes you just get an opportunity to interview, you got to take it, but you don't have much time to prepare. So what should you focus on? This is all about, again, being confident, even if you wish you had more time to prepare. So that's what's coming up. And then we wrap up the 13 chapters at the end of October, and then Jeff's scheduled through the rest of the year some special speakers on different topics, most of them on interviewing, some aspect of interviewing, and then we'll start the 13 chapter series again at the beginning of January. So I think it's worthwhile, and one of the landings today mentioned specifically how worthwhile it was to them. And don't worry if you're jumping in the middle, you can go watch the recorded videos to catch up with any topic that's of interest to you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. Walt, good morning.
Well, good morning. I want to tell you that I feel a lot better than I sound.
I like this new bass voice.
If there's time at the end, I'll be glad to sing Elvira. I can hit the bass part this morning, if you know that song. I'm gonna limit my talk this morning. The basic information that I would suggest that you look at is go to my LinkedIn section, LinkedIn page under the About, and it's all about the workshop and the details. This is not a mock interview. This is not a personalized interview. It is fundamental interviewing, fundamental over the basic categories of questions. I would like a job description so that I can look at your answers as relevant to the job. You do get an interview. They average somewhere around 15 to 17 minutes. But we want to talk about fundamentals of selling. I am, I do, I help. Those are the three pillars of what people are buying and how we do that. So just go ahead and look at my LinkedIn page. It gives the information. You have to be registered to attend. It's learning without squirming. We don't have to sit in the hot seat here. We're interested in learning and improving approaches, suggestions, ideas, strategies, options, things like that on answering these categories of questions. And then we can move into later times when you come more into the personalized type of interview like the pit crew. So I hadn't had a poem in a while, so I'm going to add one today. When the interview has begun, it's up to us to make it fun. And when it's over, all said and done, congratulations are due for the job you've won.
Walt, thank you very, very much. Applause, applause, applause. All right. It's time for the career tip of the week. Sue Ellen is not with us this week, so Roxanne will be giving it to us this week. So good morning, Roxanne.
Good morning. The career tip of the week is how candidates are using background props to stand out in video interviews. Remote backgrounds offer new real estate to showcase your personality in remote interviews. But is there a downside? The author's friend Mike recently applied for a job in marketing and communications at a video game company that asked candidates to demonstrate their creativity and deep knowledge of nerd culture. The role is a great fit for Mike, who has obsessed over comic books, science fiction, and video games since they were in high school together. But before the pandemic, the interviewer would have had to take his word for it. Since the interview was conducted remotely, however, he got an opportunity to prove it. Before the interview, Mike set up a display of his Funko figurines in clear view of the camera, featuring characters from his favorite comic books, video games, and sci-fi films. People in this nerd culture, a lot of them collect these, says Mike, who prefers not to use his last name as his current employer doesn't know he's interviewing elsewhere. The goal was to subtly show that I'm into this culture, that I do have that nerd background that they're looking for. Most advice for making a good impression in a remote interview mentions keeping the space in view of the camera clear of clutter and potential distractions, as video-based interviews evolve from the exception to the norm. However, candidates such as Mike are starting to use this new real estate to showcase their carefully curated props that can serve as conversation starter, demonstrate something about their personality, or make a case for their qualifications. Video backgrounds as the new interview attire. Whereas wardrobe choices provided one of the only opportunities for candidates to bring some of their personality into the interview room before the pandemic, a candidate's background can now serve a similar purpose in a remote interview setting. What you wore to an interview was often scrutinized or made an impression, says Diane Domeyer, Executive Director of Creative Group, the creative marketing industry staffing arm of the global human resources consulting firm, Robert Half. The reality now is as much more in the hiring is happening virtually. Your background is part of your interview swoop. Just as candidates' clothes should be carefully chosen to demonstrate both professionalism and personality, Domeyer says remote interviews have a new canvas to work with, but the rules for this space are still being defined. The creative industries have an opportunity to actually lead in marketing and making some changes behaviors for video interviews because they can be more bold, she says. It can be a differentiator, but you still need to be cautious with those sorts of things so they don't come across as too try hard or kitschy. The right background for the right job. When in doubt, Domeyer says it's best to play it safe and opt for a plain background, but adds that carefully chosen items might be worth including in later interview rounds as candidates gain a better sense of the company culture. It's kind of like your resume. You want to edit it a little bit for each situation, adds Bree Reynolds, the senior career specialist at Flex Jobs. You might apply for jobs at very traditional buttoned up companies, and you may be applying for jobs at super casual, creative companies, so you might want to change it up while always remaining true to yourself and who you are. Reynolds suggests that candidates should tailor the background based on the role and industry and look for clues regarding the company's culture in its social media activity, on its website, or on the job posting itself. Do some research on the company and see how they put themselves out into the world. Is it buttoned up and traditional, or do they get creative with things, she advises. Reynolds adds that Flex Jobs will be updating its prior guidance on best practice for remote interviews to include creative use of background space in response to a continuously evolving set of norms surrounding remote hiring. The hiring managers that you're talking to, they might not have been familiar with remote work and remote interviews before, she says. Now a lot more people are familiar with what remote work is like, the blending of work and life that happens, and how your office space and your home aren't always a sterile professional environment. A potential source of bias. Bringing more of one's home life into a professional setting, however, can be a very scary prospect to those who might feel self-conscious about that environment. Just as dress code requirements can serve as a barrier for those who don't have access to the latest fashion trends, it's important that recruiters don't add background space to the list of potential sources of discrimination. I fear that it opens up recruiters and hiring managers to more biases in video interviews because it's much easier to make those judgments, says Charles McFarland, a career strategist and founder of Do Well, Dress Well, an online personal branding and career resource. When you're on a video interview, you're opening up your home and you get an idea of what someone's financial situation is, whereas in-person interviews, you can kind of keep that separate. McFarland cautions that remote interviews could further contribute to inequality and anxiety amongst those experience income instability, as they are less likely to have high-speed internet, high-quality cameras, or relevant props. It then becomes the responsibility of the hiring managers to be aware of all that and see what they can do to alleviate some of that anxiety, she says. Maybe provide a link to a digital background they can use, which helps to level the playing field. Part of the new normal. Even digital backgrounds provide an opportunity for candidates to showcase their personality, creativity, and personal branding, adds Domeyer, who recently came across an example of someone who has done this successfully. By looking at the hiring manager's LinkedIn profile, they realized they both had gone to the same educational institution. So she put the stadium of the university behind her in the background of the interview, she says. It was very deliberate, very bold, and likely left a good impression. Whether candidates utilize relevant props or digital backgrounds, McFarland believes the space behind the interviewee will be more frequently utilized as a personal branding tool in remote interviews in the future. You just want it to be something that they're going to remember, she says. Moving forward, I think people are going to go out of their way to make sure their background has items that help them stand out. That's the career tip of the week, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you very, very much, Roxanne, for filling in this week. All right, so coming up in just a couple minutes, we'll hear from Pete Havel talking about fireproofing your future, protecting yourself against getting burned in your job search by taking the wrong job. Coming up next week, networking over the holidays. Dr. Susan Carlson will be with us. She has been with us the last several years talking about networking through the holidays, and she has reworked it to even doing it during the COVID period. So this will be an interesting little twist to what she's always talked about in the past. Whoop, here we go. Sorry about that. I didn't have it up. And then in 2 weeks, we'll do informational interviewing Walt Glass will be doing that presentation. Maybe his voice will be still a bass voice. We'll have to just see what it's like in a couple weeks. And then on the first Friday in November, we will be doing open forum. Just as a reminder, the careerdfw.org, for those people watching on the Facebook page, and the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group are two different organizations. Career DFW is a 501c3 nonprofit that I started back in 2008. And the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group has been around since the late 1990s, helping people in the North Dallas area. So they're two different organizations. I just at this time happen to be leading both. You are welcome at any time to overthrow me here and take over the North Dallas Focus Group, and you can put together the slides and do all the coordination and find the speakers, but you're not going to get Career DFW out of my hands. All right, so it's time for our main event. Let me give you a few words about our speaker. Pete has been a lobbyist, a political consultant, and a crisis communication executive. He's worked in Washington, Austin, and state capitals around the country. He never intended to be an author, but after an experience he'll tell us about, he's not only written a book, but he's become an authority on workplace culture, leadership, and more. He currently lives in Dallas with his wife, Janie, and a 17-year-old daughter, Reagan. So Pete, thank you very much for being with us. It's all yours.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me this morning. Got a good group this morning from what I can see. That's awesome. Yeah, excited to be here. I can safely say I have walked in many of y'all's shoes at one point or another, and learned some things along the way that I'm going to talk about. Walk through a little bit of my. Did I lose you guys? Can you all see?
No.
Okay, good deal. Going to talk a little bit about my experience in the job search, in the job from hell as well, and some things I learned along the way. So let me go over and share get my screen going. All right, there we go. So we're going to have lots of fire themes for the next little while. Wrote a book called The Arsonist in the Office, and we're going to be talking about why that is at all relevant to you. But one of the things I learned at one point in my life was how important workplace culture is, how much it matters to love your job, and at times how much it matters in your life to find yourself in the wrong situation, and how you get yourself safely out of that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But what I talk about and where my perspectives come from is finding myself in that miserable situation. We're going to walk through that just a little bit. But if y'all want to reach out to me, I do have a newsletter that if you want to text Arsonist to 66866, I send out a newsletter every week on leadership, increasingly career-related things, as well as all sorts of things related to workplace culture, how you can be a better leader, how you can deal with tough issues in the workplace, those types of things. And here's all the different ways you can contact me. I think that's got everything. Well, I don't have Instagram on there, but I know to Instagram well. So those are a bunch of different ways to get in touch with me, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with any of you that have an interest. So let me tell you why I'm here, and from what Jeff described about my background, I'm a lobbyist by trade. One great thing about being a lobbyist for much of my career is I always made everybody else happy. And the reason I say that is they do a study every couple of years about the credibility and trustworthiness of different professions. And of course, you've got doctors and ministers, all sorts of things like that at the top. And at the very bottom, I believe it's 99th out of 100, and I'm not even sure what the 100th is, you had lobbyists. And so, I always made everybody else feel better because at least they could be instantly more ethical and respected than the person they were talking to. But in terms of my career, it certainly wasn't anything where I had ever planned to be devoting my time and my energy to talking about workplace culture and career-related issues. But let me tell you why I'm here. It was a day like pretty much any other day we might experience in the middle of fall, middle of spring, just cool, beautiful day. And I was walking into a phenomenal job, and it seemed great. Salary was great. Benefits were good. I was right in the wheelhouse of the types of things that I wanted to do. And my job was phenomenal right off the start for about the first 30 seconds. And that's when things started getting strange. And almost instantly, I had my new coworkers coming up to me saying things like, "Hey, what have they told you about this job? Do you not know what you've gotten into?" Complete strangers saying, "Hey, Pete, I've heard you've just come on board here. Man, I'm praying for you," which is really cool and all, unless you have no idea what they're talking about. And I didn't, because I hadn't done enough homework to find out what I had really walked into. I get called down to my CEO's office, and he explains to me, and I'll tell you the story in a real Reader's Digest type of version, but I had been hired to work for the employee to work with the employee, I should say, that had been deemed so toxic, so dangerous, so litigious, had been assumed to have leaked information to the media, perhaps to regulators, and had made wild charges against all sorts of people within the organization. And they had made the interesting management decision that instead of moving that employee out, and as you can imagine what I just described, that person would be at the very top of SWOT analysis, at the top of the threats list. But they had made the decision, they referred to it as, it's cheaper to keep her, in that they were afraid of what might happen to them and their financial futures, their occupational futures, if they moved on a toxic employee out of the organization and what she might do from the outside. So they kept her inside and gave me most of her job. And then explained to me that, well, Pete, we're going to try and protect you as best we can, but you can assume you're going to be coming under attack soon. That was a heck of a first day. And over the next few years, I learned a heck of a lot about a toxic workplace, because from what I just described, I had leadership and learned how many layers of leadership had ducked the hard issues of dealing with problem employees, problem cultures, bad behavior, all sorts of different things that then became very much my problem. And so I came with that perspective, and I'm going to tell you a little bit later on about how my experience ended and what prompted me to be here today. But I want to tell you a little bit about things that you may want to know from my experience, and things that you can put into place in your job search, how you can smoke out some problems before they start or before you walk into them. And then I have a lot of experience as well in doing what many of y'all are doing right now, which is finding that new opportunity potentially. And Mark's comment just a few moments ago about, how do you answer that that difficult question of why you left your last employer? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it is, well, book worthy. I'm gonna walk through a little bit of that as well, and what I've done to turn the page, some things that I've learned along the way, and then talk about the amazing opportunities that come in life when you least expect them and you work hard. And if you're here this morning, you're working hard to change your destination. So we'll dig right into it. All right. I want to talk a little bit about some warning signs. You are in walking into any workplace, you see some good behavior and some bad behavior, hopefully a whole lot more good. But there are some signs. I'm sure these will resonate with you in some way. You may have seen one or two. In my case, when I wrote my book and gave a top 20 list of warning signs, I gave it a measure of, did I see this every once in a while? Did I see it somewhat often, or did I see it regularly? I was witnessing about 18 out of my top 20 warning signs of a bad workplace. But some things, and I want to give you all a bit of a gut check this morning. And I know many of you all are in that job search mode, but I know where you get, how you get at some points when you're looking for a job. And for me, I reached a point at one point where I'm not sure if desperate was the right word, but I sure was hungry. I was feeling my blood pressure going up at all times because I wasn't finding that opportunity. And there are some places where you don't want to land. Things like where you see behavior like retaliation, bad behavior being excused or sometimes institutionalized because leadership has other priorities of, well, we've got this salesperson who's killing it on their numbers. They're getting me my bonus each year. I'm not going to deal with this person. So y'all take care of yourselves, and leadership will walk away. Intimidation. When you start seeing professional survival trumping everything else that leadership in an organization looks at. Gossip is another big one. That gossip sometimes becomes a lot more legitimate than official communications coming out of an organization. Zombies or outcasts, people that at some point have spoken up about something or other, and they become the people that are on the outs. They're no longer the cool kids. You've got things like multiple sets of rules in the organization, and that's a huge one, as you know, that when there's different expectations for conduct and ethics, you're going to start having problems, and people will either resent the two sets of rules or they will begin to exploit the two sets of rules. You have silence or screaming. Two signs of a toxic workplace. Silence being, have you ever been in that meeting when you have a manager who's just riding everybody at all times, making life difficult for them, or maybe you've been this person at various times, and you ask the person, you ask the group, hey, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have anything to add? And there is absolute silence. And that likely means one of two things. Either the person that's presenting has done a great job, or the group has simply checked out on them and they don't want to offer feedback anymore, or they know that whatever they say in that meeting is going to go in one ear and out the other. In essence, employee feedback is a huge sign of problems. And then, of course, the lack of employee feedback is a source of problems. And then, so that's the silence part. Screaming is, and people are getting into it in the workplace and fighting, that's not great either. Secrecy becoming a currency, that information is power. We've likely seen that. And I've got Game of Thrones down there, and heard from a new CEO the other day who's just recently taken a job, somehow found my book on Amazon, and had not been told by their nonprofit leader. So this person has a board of directors that they're reporting to. They've not been told about any of the problems, how many people within the organization that had attempted to get their job, but were seen as having bad attitudes, that this person now had to manage and had been kept in place. And he described it as as being hired into season 1 of the Game of Thrones, and you enter into that where your life becomes something out of a Lord of the Flies or Game of Thrones. High burnout factors, and certainly, and I'm going to talk about this in terms of the job search a little bit as well. Health. Certainly you can see a lot of stress coming out in a bad environment, but certainly we all need to be cognizant of that in the process we're going through now. That is, it's a high stress one. And real quickly, and I'm going to get to the tools, but those bad environments we see come from a few different things, and these again are things that in some ways you can ask as part of your search to find out what you're walking into. Organizations that you read about their culture on maybe on the billboard when you walk into the organization, but is anyone talking about the culture of the organization when you're in the interview? Or do you find it in any of what they communicate to the public? And we're going to be talking about what some of those telltale signs are. When you're talking to people that have worked there, hearing about priorities being on essentially everything other than what the company says are their priorities. Big one, and I'm sure we've got a mix of people here, people both in leadership and management, as well as rank and file employees. One of the biggest things you'll see from a cultural standpoint is training levels. And great companies train people. They raise them up to become prepared leaders. And you're going to want to find out about what that is, because people and companies that let those steps go, those are going to be problem organizations to join, because they're not focusing on all of the right things. And then, of course, again, and I'm going to talk about it a few more times, the different rules for different people when you see leadership getting different treatment than everybody else. And we're going to go into that a little bit on where you can find out those things. Speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about firewatching. And that's what I call the process of finding how you find out what you're walking into. Right now, I'm sure all of you have a lot of different jobs that you're looking at, have a lot of varied interest levels, but I have about 10 things that I suggest in the Arsonist in the Office that you need to look at on some level to learn everything you can. Because as I learned very quickly, there's one thing worse than being unemployed, and that is finding yourself in a job that is a worse situation than being unemployed. So first one, and this is both something you should do with great thoroughness, but also take it for what it's worth, is look at the reviews, Glassdoor, Indeed, and look at those, however many you see, look at them in the aggregate. Don't look at any individual one and view that as an aha moment, because you're going to get some people that are extremely disgruntled, or you may get a few people from the corporate office that may be complete suck-ups and were told to put down a positive review on Glassdoor. So what I always encourage is for people to look at those in bulk and look for the trends that you may be seeing out of it. Are you seeing the same comments again and again that maybe feedback isn't welcomed, or there's a split between the haves and the have-nots in the organization, or that there may be problem departments that you may be running into? All these different things are going to start painting a little bit of a picture for you. The next one is, so that's a little bit on the reviews. Internet searches is another one. I would suggest at the very least go 4 to 5 pages deep in internet searches about the company using various keywords. And these days, when you're looking at culture, you may put the company name plus lawsuits, harassment, workplace culture, reviews, all these different things that can bring up something about the company outside of what they want you to see. So dig a little bit. Don't go with those first few pages only, because if there is a tough situation, or if a company's frankly just trying to put their best foot forward, they're going to try and bury any bad news that's there. Hopefully there's not, but any bad news that's there further down in the searches. So do your homework. Another one is ignore the perks. I've learned a few things throughout my process in recent years, and that is sometimes the perks of an organization, which I've seen mentioning everything from foosball tables to snacks to bikes that one company was buying everyone a bicycle for their own fitness. All these different things can either be wonderful or they could be absolute distractions from what maybe other things within the organization. But companies have learned that, well, we want something to sell. So they're going to put in some things that frankly don't matter as things that may lure you in. So purposefully ignore those out of your search. Things that don't add to salary, don't add to contentment in the job, ignore them. People watch. Use, and I know y'all focus a lot in the interviews on executing well, and that is very important. But I'd encourage you to watch everything else that you see during that process. Do people seem comfortable? Do the interviewers seem comfortable together? Are they prepared when you're walking in? What are people doing? And watch as much body language as possible. And is it, one of those things that's an absolute telltale sign? No, but it starts to create a composite of what you can view from the organization. Another one is digging into LinkedIn a little bit, and certainly we want to make those connections from people we can find on social media. But for those of you going in a little bit blind into some companies where you may see a job that looks great, but you're dealing with a company that you never talked to before, y'all, I would frankly not hesitate one bit in reaching out to some people and that may be even strangers, but former employees that work there, and just ask the open-ended question of, what was it like to work there? Can you tell me about what you enjoyed about the job? Getting something other than the company line from them about what you thought. So, and usually done with former employees rather than current. I would also say this when it comes to making the ask. I have learned, and I don't know what y'all think of this, but I have seen it several times, and I've heard people bring it up when I've brought it up, and that is our reliance on close friends for their thoughts on any particular company that they've worked in. And the assumption that I always had is that I would get my best information on a job from my best friends, that they're going to tell me exactly what to watch out for, what to look for in a positive way, et cetera, et cetera. And I've got to be honest, some very good friends have not tried to steer me wrong, but if they view you as needing an opportunity, wanting an opportunity, and not wanting to stand in the way of allowing you to get that job that you very much want to have, they may not tell you the whole story. And I've heard this more than once from many people, and frankly, I've found it in my own experience that good friends don't want to stand in the way, but that can create challenges down the line when your view on a company may be a little bit distorted from what it's actually like. Another one is I'd encourage you to watch the hiring process. And there's that old saying when I was single, I remember back to it of everyone's on their best behavior on their first date, right? And if it goes, you expect it to potentially go down from there, but everybody's going to have that best behavior at that time. I view the hiring process in that way as well. And if you start seeing those signs of companies not showing the respect and interest level that you start, and more dragging you through the process to hiring than making it a very positive experience at first, pay attention to it, because it can be very important. And those are going to be the best times, the the least tense of times from a hiring standpoint once you're in, and things can get more challenging from there. So watch that. Turnover rates is a big one. Find out what those are. You know, if you're filling a role, ask the question of what happened to the last person. Where are they in the company now? And maybe dig a little bit after that point, if you don't have a good answer to that, to find out where some of those people are and how often they are turning over certain jobs. Because company turnover rates may be good, but you never want to land in a department that is a problem department within a good company as well. So looking for those turnover rates, looking for patterns in questioning. I remember in the experience that I talk about in the book, I received a few different very vague questions about how I dealt with difficult people. And okay, Pete, you seem like somebody that can deal. You've dealt with a lot of politicians. What are you, can you take on a challenge? Well, sure. Look for those patterns, and obviously you want to take notes in your interview if you can, because you want to be on that same level playing field with the interviewer. But look for those patterns. If they may be deceiving you, but they may be showing you some breadcrumbs that you want to follow. And then another one, I advise everybody these days, have an advisory team, especially in the moment that everybody in a job search is in, where sometimes any job looks pretty good and you don't want any job, and you may miss some things, or you may reorder your priorities for the quick adrenaline of getting that paycheck in, and maybe regretting what your priorities were at that moment at a later time. Let me talk a little bit about some must-dos that I view as important in the job search that I've learned over time. And I found myself in a situation, and we're going to talk about how things ended for me and what put me where I am and what I'm doing now, because hopefully it will add some hope to some folks that are just as frustrated as can be right now. I found myself, having been in politics and doing some of what I did, as I had a very healthy ego, and I think ego can be really good, or it can impede the process. That as best as we can, check it at the door, because for me, when I did that, it was the best learning experience I had, and I began to make some relationships that I didn't have before, frankly, from people that were going through the same experience that I might not have connected with otherwise. That, well, we're not in the same field, or they're more junior than I am, or those kind of things. For me, I built some of my best friendships out of that experience by letting down some barriers I had. Another one is knowing your story and literally making it a story, because you will find outside of the interview process that most of your friends, they can probably repeat what your title is in a company, but what you actually do and how you describe it is probably pretty wonkish. And get it to the point of being able to put it in a story where you can describe what you do, and that you're getting an understanding that you'd find in the job descriptions for dummies type of thing, of mainstream it as much as possible. As much as you can conversationalize it, the better. Here's one, and I know we were talking about one of the presentations coming up dealing with COVID-19. I would say right now, if you are number one, we're all a little stir crazy, aren't we? Hands? Yes, we all want to get out. We want to talk to more people. Right now, I swear, there's never been a better time to access people, to make that phone call, 5-10 minutes. How you doing? How's your family? Hey, just wanted to check in on you. and have those conversations with virtually anybody you want to reach, because somebody wants to talk to you, and they may be sitting in their living room, they may be at Starbucks, if they're allowed to be in a Starbucks. People want to talk right now, and I would encourage you, if you have 500 network connections, start connecting them. Start connecting with them, because I think you're going to find that people are more accessible than ever, and those quick conversations, you're going to be able to, number one, you're probably going to make their day, because we all want to talk to somebody, but number two, be able to tell your story and let more people know. So where we had that barrier before, when the world was a little bit more normal, I think a lot of it's broken down. Keeping busy. I know that y'all probably talk about in these meetings, keeping your schedule, and looking at it as a 9-to-5 job, that type of thing. And I think that is so important at this point. And if you're not doing it, one of the things that I found when I was going through my job search mode was I was focusing on it, but I had huge gaps. For me, what worked, I started getting a couple of part-time jobs just to do something, just to give me a little bit of more of self-worth, because it was just driving me up the wall to not have something going on for more time. If it takes it, and I heard Mark Cuban talking the other day. He was on a podcast talking about the job market right now, and we all want those ideal jobs, but part of it, frankly, right now, between COVID-19 and the job search, get something that's going to keep you busy, keep that self-esteem up, whatever it is, keep it going, staying active, and looking for that opportunity. But a lot of that stuff all plays into all those different things. You're going to keep your core esteem up there. Building your network, definitely make those calls. But right now, I would tell you, as somebody that works social media, especially LinkedIn, actively, I've never had a better rate of acceptance on those people that I've wanted to reach than right now. Again, I think that's one of those things that may have to do a lot with the pandemic, but it's there. Keeping relevant on social media and with friends, make those connections both for yourself as well as your job search. Is huge right now. The opportunities, and no matter what you want to talk about on LinkedIn, for instance, finding those opportunities to say something, stay in front of people, pass on articles of interest where you see people that you want to connect with, just some way where you can keep on building those relationships, because it's out there and it's doable. Must-dos, mental health and physical health. Y'all, if you aren't out there trying to get that exercise in and stressing out, it's going to wear on you. Y'all have either been told that or you know it, and keep thinking about that and talking to people. Develop that core of friends that you're going to need through this process, and then a few other things that I want to touch on. I'm trying to click over to the next page. Okay. Thinking about the future, and obviously you're probably thinking about it at every moment at this point, because I know when I've been in the job search, I've focused almost 100% of my thought and time on changing my trajectory and finding that next opportunity. Is both planning for that next job, and I may freak some of y'all out on this, but I'm meaning it in absolutely the right way. And let me frame it this way. So right now I'm doing training, I'm doing consulting, I'm writing another book, I've got a book in circulation. I'm doing all sorts of different things. And I sat down in front of a recruiter a few weeks ago, and I did great. My interview blew her away. But for me, I've got a challenge in my resume. And I'm really only looking for a job, frankly, because of COVID-19, public speaking is pretty much out the window for quite a while. Yes, you can get virtual presentations that are paid, but it's a lot more iffy, and certainly the consulting and training, all these different things are more challenging, right? And so I did my interview, didn't hear back after a couple weeks, and then the phone rings, and the recruiter tells me, well, you did a great job, and I always know where you did a great job in the interview is going. She informs me that they found candidates better suited for the job, et cetera, et cetera. And she pointed out to me that I didn't. There were people that had this credential or had something in their background in some other way. I said, "Can I ask you one more question?" Because I wanted to use her as a little bit of a focus group for me. And I asked her about the question of essentially, I've written a book, because I was very open about that. It's not a secret. When you Google me, it's about the first 100 things that you see. And so I said, I talked about workplace culture. We talked about what my book is about, which is me describing my story that I experienced there, what I learned, and what regular employees and in leadership can learn about why they need to deal with workplace issues. And I asked her point blank, "Hey, did this affect me at all?" I was good with it either way, but I had brought it up because I knew it would be of interest to somebody. And she said, "Yeah, I've got to tell you, I really wouldn't be able to advance you to the next round for any of my clients if I had to select a few of them, because this may scare some of them off." And so that was a real lesson for me. And it, while I don't want a quote real job in the future, I know where I'm going in helping change people's futures. I have looked at these other jobs, but that moment was frankly pretty darn empowering to me, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the hunch of wanting to do my own thing has been there for a long time, and it's growing. But number two, I would tell you from that moment on, the fear of her maybe being right has unleashed every single entrepreneurial idea I've ever had. And depending upon your age, and depending upon your the niche you fill in the world, all these different things, starting to think through whether you get that ideal job or whether you're going to be on a completely different path and an exciting path at some point in your career, and maybe soon, is something just to think about, because you're going to be amazed at what happens from that point of thinking, well, if this doesn't work out, what else can I do? And thinking about it in a good way. For me, I've started 3 new and different streams of income. So some of them on a shoestring, but all workplace culture and career help oriented things that I hadn't even thought of before, because it lit a fire under me even more than what I had with traditional job search. So hope that didn't freak any of y'all out, that conversation, because it scared me for a minute, and then the rest of it was pretty exciting. And just thinking about, okay, blank sheet of paper, what really can I do if if something doesn't work out the next month or 6 months? There's some exciting stuff out there, and there's opportunities out there with a pretty low threshold that you can do. Last one that I've got on there, and I'm just going to touch on a few more things, then we can move on to questions or whatever else. I would say at this time, and I was giving a presentation to Lockheed Martin employees the other day, both in Fort Worth and a couple other states, on how to stand out, how to get noticed when no one is watching. Essentially, they have 85% of their employees that are currently working from home, and a lot of them are feeling a bit uncomfortable, thinking, I haven't seen my manager, I haven't seen my leadership, in 6 months? You know, is there an axe that's about to fall? Am I in good shape? Am I not? So I was brought in to talk about those things that they can do to differentiate themselves at this time. One of the big ones I encourage them is during this time, get comfortable on video, whether you want to be or not. That especially on social media and on LinkedIn and things like that, just the open rates, the hit rates alone on something that has video. If you're an expert in your area or you have a thought in your area, put yourself on video right now. But it's probably going to take a couple times. And on Facebook Live, for instance, and I know we're on Facebook Live right now, you can record it for an audience of 1. So you can go on there right now and do a 1-minute video on, you know, why you like chocolate ice cream. And if you are not comfortable, you can erase the darn thing and nobody will ever see it. But go through that process, because I think in any job search, that component of, if you're working social media, becoming that person that looks like they're comfortable to be there rather than it looks like they're in a hostage video. So think about getting comfortable with that, and certainly public speaking as well, in that so many jobs, when you're taking that next level, if you're looking to move up in a company or move on to a larger role in another company, you're going to need that public speaking element as well. So those are some things from my own experience, as well as from what I'm seeing in trends on in the workplace at this time, that is they're just important to be thinking about. And certainly my biggest goal in being here this morning is to have you thinking about the importance of culture in choosing your next job and how to find out about it. And I'm going to tell you about where I essentially why I'm here today and what made me an author. So I told you all about the experience of what happened to me at the front end of the job. Them saying I was going to be facing a challenging situation, that I was going to be dealing with an employee, and I didn't get into it too much, that they called the arsonist. And she was a person that had torched careers, torched various things in the company, and just frankly had hurt the organization in numerous ways. And I knew I was going to come under attack, and eventually did, in every way imaginable, that I detail a little bit in the book. But what I learned throughout that time was that at some point I was going to need to take a stand, whether it was going to be in dealing with what was happening to my team around me or to me personally. And I finally did. And I reached a moment within my organization where I was confronted with some bizarre behavior, something that I describe as, I didn't know at that moment whether I needed a meeting with HR or if I needed a meeting with law enforcement. It was just starting to get that weird. And when I spoke up, my organization did what ended up being, for me, a logical, sad, and predictable thing, which was when I said, you need to do something about this this employee. This goes beyond any normal bounds. I found myself out of a job. They took care of the easy problem, which was moving me out, writing me a check, sending me on my way, rather than dealing with the employee that they had already told me they had fear of to deal with, and what they might do from the outside. So I found myself out of a job, and I found myself, Mark talked earlier about, what do you do when you're asked the question of, well, why did you leave your last employer? And I would tell you that one of the reasons my book has been successful is, one, I've got some good information in there, but number two, I don't know if it's exactly bragging on my part, because it's never an experience I want. My story is about the most crazy thing you've ever seen in a workplace, and hopefully we'll never experience in a workplace. But how do you say that to an interviewer when they ask you why you left your last employer? What do you do when you're afraid of what your HR department might say about you because as you were leaving, they threatened you with with threats of lawsuits if you ever uttered what had occurred within the organization. You know, some things that frankly were very hardball types of tactics that they used, but it put me in a heck of a position. And it being in the niche field that I'm in government affairs, there's not a whole lot of jobs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are open at any time in government affairs. It's a very small audience, and I was at a seniority level where I was making good money. And as we know, the more you make, the steeper that pyramid becomes in terms of how many jobs were available. So I had a heck of a problem on my hands. And I spent a lot of time in job search mode, but I also found myself in a lot of situations where people were saying to me time after time, hey, Pete, you've learned some things that I never knew. I've been in the workforce for a long time. These things on culture that you're talking about, how office politics works, this is some pretty interesting stuff, and you need to write a book. And it was ridiculous. I thought the idea was absolutely ridiculous. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I've got a story to tell and I can help some people. And over the next little while, I began to put that book into action, worked with some people that could tell me how to structure my existing story and put it into a forum that somebody wanted to read. And I did so. And for those of you that are frustrated out there right now, trying to find that opportunity, I just want to share with y'all where my life is going and offer you some encouragement on this. And what I've learned from that is, since telling my story, writing a book, taking a chance, taking a calculated risk in my case, and I don't urge everybody to write a book about a previous professional experience, because some of it might not be taken well. I have found myself with new connections, new expertise, and frankly, an absolutely new career that's turned out of sharing knowledge, helping others, and doing something that I never thought in a million years I would be doing. And many of y'all are going to be going the traditional route. That is probably the very smart route of finding that next opportunity in your role that you've been planning for throughout your career. But some of you are going to be going into new things. And as somebody that is doing it right now, it's as scary as can be. I have days where my heart's racing a little bit and I wonder what the heck I'm doing. But the opportunities, and especially the opportunity to help other people, has been absolutely phenomenal. So want to leave it with that. And hopefully, Jeff, I haven't gone too long or too much longer than you expected, but be happy to take any questions, comments, or anything like that y'all might have.
Yeah, so if you have a question, Pete, thank you for good information. If anybody has a question, please just go ahead and unmute your mic and ask away. Barbara?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes, the question girl, right? Pete, I really enjoyed your presentation. I certainly can relate to some of the attributes on your Firewatching slide, but I wanted to ask you a specific question. In the very beginning, you said, great companies train people. Can you provide other types of attributes of great companies? And that was my question.
Sure. I mean, certainly when you're talking about cultures, and that's kind of where I was going on that. Some great signs are usually where employee feedback is welcomed rather than avoided, so it's not completely top down. But training is definitely a big one. Frankly, because not only is it good for the employee that's being trained, but it's good for everybody else. And it starts creating shared values within the organization. I'm a sports fan, so let me tell you why, and sorry for the sports analogy, if anybody's not one, but I view culture as such a powerful thing because frankly, of what all the surveys tell us, and that is you've got people and a huge number that will actually say, okay, what would you trade? Meaning in your company and feeling like you're doing something productive and important, or I think the number was $10,000. There was a survey that was asked this, what are you gonna trade? And it was overwhelmingly, it was about 70% of people saying, you can keep the 10,000, give me something that I care about and I feel like I'm a bigger part of. The companies that achieve that can show that, they can generate that type of passion, make people feel like they're listened to, is overwhelmingly positive. So that's one more sign. That was probably a long answer, but anything that is making people feel like they're part of a team, treating people well, and respect is going to be great no matter what they do. Salary and benefits may change things, but you've got people feeling like they're part of something bigger. It's always going to be good.
Well, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Ellen Beth.
Hi there.
Hi.
Did you list, I came in a little late, but I really enjoyed your presentation, Pete. I have gone through a very similar experience and wondered whether to list that on my resume and on my LinkedIn.
The job itself, or?
Yes.
Part of me would say, and depending upon, I know there's always a few calculations on this, and there's probably a lot of different views on this within the group. I think part of that sometimes will come down to how long you were there. You certainly don't, if it's a sizable enough gap, you don't want to not have an answer for what happened there, especially if it's something unpleasant. So if it's a very short stint, I've seen some people that leave it off, if it's a few months or something like that. But if it's a lengthier amount of time, somebody's going to be asking you about it at some point. What happened in this 4 years or however long it was. So those, I think a lot of it really has to do with length, because the curiosity is going to be there. It's going to be the 800-pound, no, not the 800-pound gorilla, the elephant in the room. I got my wrong analogy there, but I think you're probably going to have to answer that. So it's the question of what that story is going to be, and probably get yourself to the point where you can answer that question comfortably enough. If it's okay, they had in my case, I was terminated essentially for being the good guy, but the story was crazy. A difficult story to tell. But other people have, and frankly, I have a feeling in most cases, if you're having difficulty describing it, you in the general sense, your friends are likely going to think it may be a little bit easier to tell, and people may have thoughts on how you can describe it. So a little bit of it's the mental game, and I was definitely there on just that lack of confidence of, well, what are they going to say? Are they going to sense that there was an issue there? I think a lot of that is in our heads at times. I know it was for me, but people want to know what you did, not necessarily what happened. So it's not easy, but I think we put a lot more pressure on that answer than a lot of other people are going to. So you're going to be okay.
Ellen Beth, I would encourage you to, talk with Mark McDonald. He's really good about, this is the only thing he really concentrates on. Mark, go ahead. You can unmute your mic and tell people your little promo again about, or give us your opinion.
Yeah, so great topic. So specifically on whether you should put it on your resume or not. So, part of answering the question why you left your last job is the opening phrase, thank you for asking. I learned a lot and I contributed a lot. Okay, so now you have to think about what you learned and what you contributed, and if you think it's necessary to share it. So this is the question I ask people who have, had a short stint and left. And I got to say, most of the time when I coach people, it was a financial situation. But don't believe that's obvious, okay? Because when companies start to get in a financial situation, They don't want their employees to know. They don't want their customers to know. They don't want their suppliers to know. They really don't want anybody to know, because employees who can will leave. Customers who can will move on, and suppliers will demand cash up front, which they may not have. So, I mean, a little rumor could collapse their business. So this brings out rather bizarre behavior, maybe, similar to what Pete, to keep it secret and to make you think you did something wrong, and that's why they fired you. But anyway, back to the question at hand. So if you, and sometimes you're just there short enough that really all you did was you learned something. You learned a new process, you learned a new tool. But certainly, if you think you have a good story to tell from something that you contributed, even if the environment was difficult, then go ahead and put it on there, and then you get to tell that story if they ask. Or even if they don't ask, if it's a story you want to tell, then you tell it and say, even though I was only there a short time, I did this, and the other thing. And I've seen some, 6 month. I just coached somebody for the last few weeks, 3 weeks ago, I think, and they did more in 6 months than they'd done in the previous job in 2 years. Okay, it was just a very fast-paced environment. So there were a lot of good stories to tell, even in that 6 month duration position.
Well, I also think that my company let us all know that there are issues to not talk about out in public, because I think that encouraged us to leave, so they wouldn't give out severance packages to close the company.
Yeah, but I've heard all kinds of bizarre things, probably the most bizarre, but here's the one that sticks in my mind, is it was a manager. They told him he needed to be at a meeting in New York. They told him on Tuesday. And so he got a ticket and showed up in New York, went to the meeting, turned in his expense report. The next week, they were preparing to fire him for not following travel guidelines on how much to pay for a ticket. Okay, complete setup. I mean, how else can you interpret that? So, I mean, you buy a ticket on Tuesday to go to New York on Wednesday, you pay a lot of money for it. So they ran him out of the organization for that.
Mike Curtis, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, Pete, thanks. That was a great program you gave there. I enjoyed it a lot. One thing that I've noticed recently, you had mentioned about contacts and getting hold of people have a lot of time now. I ran into the problem of the people that are still employed are not talking and accepting times to even talk for 10 or 15 minutes, just because of the humongous crush of people that are requesting them.
Sure.
I went like 0 for 10 at one stretch. It was just amazing. So I ended up talking to people that are in the same boat I was in. I got lucky and just landed this week, but
excellent.
Yeah, but and one thing I used, one of my jobs I used was I left because of ethical differences. I do environmental and safety, and we have an unwritten code of ethics, but sometimes that's something that comes up with people too. And also I found in the past too, that if your company starts offering packages to leave, the packages in the beginning are usually bigger and better than the packages at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. One job I stuck it out as the last one in my group of 17 people to leave, and I wasn't the boss. And my package when I left was considerably less than what the people in the beginning that left.
Actually, when I left my company, I closed the department, and I got a 30% increase to make sure I stayed on to close.
Well, yeah, they will give. I had a friend who actually hired onto a company just to close the company, and he got all kinds of perks just to come on and do that. So yeah, for staying to close the company, they'll sometimes give you a lot of extra things. But I mean, just staying on to stay on, because it's your baby. You help create this stuff. You have pride in it. You don't want to leave it. So I got over that after that job.
Like the one thing I'd say on one of your comments, it sounds like it worked well for you, but it's always it can be tricky in some organizations. in terms of the, you mentioned ethical differences that depending upon who you're interviewing with, you may have just hit their sweet spot and they're going to appreciate it, or they view it as a red flag and that that you're bad mouthing a previous employer. And it's always that can be a challenge depending upon the organization of what you've done. I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but it's always interesting to see how that can be taken.
Oh yeah, you have to watch how you say it. Definitely, that they were either asking to do things or they were trending in directions that you weren't totally comfortable with from your standpoint. Is the way I usually put it. They were trending in directions that I wasn't totally comfortable with, which wasn't saying they were doing anything wrong, but I wasn't comfortable there either. So,
Any other questions? Anyone? I don't see any unmute mics. Well, Pete, thank you very much. Great information. Thank you very much. If you're going to reach out to Pete and connect with him, be sure to send a personal note. Just don't send him a generic request, request on LinkedIn. Be sure to send that personal note so he knows who you are. So Pete, once again, thank you very, very much for your time today.
Appreciate it.
Let's see here. If for anybody who's online, if you haven't put your information into the chat box, or if you're on Zoom and you'd like to be part of getting emails from the North Dallas Focus Group, please send me information, txjmor@yahoo.com, or be sure to put it in the group. You may have seen emails coming out that the Yahoo groups are going away as of December 15th. So all the career groups out there are now scrambling to try to find a new way to communicate with everybody. We'll be doing the same thing here in the next couple of weeks, changing over to something hopefully by beginning of November. So just be aware that every Yahoo group out there goes away as of December 15th. Next Friday, networking over the holidays, even with COVID, with Dr. Susan Carlson. She'll be here. Should be a very interesting, fun talk next week. For those people who have not put your 30-second introductions into the chat box, we really wish that you would do though. Put your name, phone number, email address, position you're looking for, a couple target companies, then hit the return key. That way, number one, I can make sure we get you on the roster. Number two, I can make sure everything is updated on there. For those people on Facebook, if you put the information in the comment field, I will go through and erase those details so it doesn't hang out on Facebook forever and ever and ever. Coming up here next Tuesday, our LinkedIn Tuesday will be with Locke Alderson, how to use LinkedIn for job hunting, strategies that gets results. Next Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the Frisco Career Transition Workshop. That'll be the final session, adapting your salary negotiations to COVID-19. On Wednesday, session 12 of 13, limited prep time interview, difficult interviewer and questions, and cultivating confidence. And then Thursday at 1 o'clock, we'll be doing our Effective Resume Thursday session. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career FW Facebook page for everybody to view in the future. It'll be on the Career USA YouTube channel later this afternoon. I'll be uploading it there later this afternoon. Please follow us on Facebook. Every time we go live, you'll get a little alert on your phone. And if you follow us if you subscribe to our Career USA YouTube channel, you will get a message every time we load a new video up there. On the Career USA YouTube channel, looks something like this. You'll see, we ask that you click on playlist. The easiest way to view this is click on playlist and then go down to where it says view full playlist, where the red arrow is underneath the video. If you click on the video, you're going to see whatever it shows there. But if you click at the very bottom and you click view full playlist, you'll be able to see all the different titles and the events that we have going on, or that we've speakers that we've had so far. So thank you very much for joining us today. Pete, thank you again. And everybody, please have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
y'all have a good weekend.